The unthinkable has just happened. Keir Starmer has been dealt the most crushing political blow in modern British history. The Supreme Court has uncovered a £124,000 financial scandal so severe, so indisputable, that it has issued a direct order demanding the Prime Minister's resignation. This isn't just a scandal, it's a political earthquake, shaking the very core of the United Kingdom's democracy. In a dramatic televised ruling, the court declared that Starmer is no longer fit to hold office, exposing a complex web of undeclared income, lavish perks, and abuse of authority that has plunged the nation into total political turmoil. Protesters are already flooding the streets. Ministers are resigning en masse. Buckingham Palace is watching intently as the Prime Minister defies the highest legal authority in the country. The nation is on edge, and what happens next could break the British political system as we know it. Just hours ago, the UK Supreme Court delivered a verdict so explosive, it brought Parliament to a standstill and sent Keir Starmer's leadership into freefall. In a unanimous decision, the panel of judges found that Starmer had knowingly misled the public by failing to disclose £124,000 from the sale of a property in North London, money that mysteriously disappeared from his official financial statements. But that was just the beginning. In a blistering 268-page judgment, the court outlined a disturbing pattern of concealed wealth, extravagant donations, and calculated efforts to silence opposition. The country held its breath as Chief Justice Dame Sukkar declared, "The office of Prime Minister has been exploited to hide personal gain. This court finds Keir Starmer unfit to serve." The scandal broke following a month-long probe by financial auditors who flagged serious discrepancies in Starmer's declared income. What started as a routine tax review quickly escalated into a constitutional emergency when forensic accountants unearthed hidden transactions tied to offshore accounts and luxury gifts from influential business figures. Among the findings, a £15,000 Rolex watch, £24,000 worth of private jet travel, and multiple luxury hotel stays, all paid for by political donors with major corporate interests. The Supreme Court's report confirmed that none of these lavish perks were disclosed in Starmer's mandatory parliamentary filings, violating multiple laws tied to political transparency and ethics. Even more alarming, the judgment revealed that Starmer had personally pressured civil servants to bury internal audits that raised serious concerns about the money trail. In one case, an email from his office instructed a compliance officer to handle the discrepancy quietly. Another leaked document showed the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff advising him to delay the financial declaration until after the next election. The court didn't hold back, calling it a calculated strategy to mislead both Parliament and the public. This wasn't negligence, the judgment read. It was a systematic effort to conceal. The backlash was swift. Just minutes after the court's televised announcement, thousands of protesters flooded the streets around Westminster. Chants of "Resign now" and "No one is above the law" echoed across the capital and exploded across social media. Outrage spread like wildfire. Hashtags like Starmer Resign and PM Scandal topped global trending lists. Inside the Labour Party, panic gripped the ranks. Several backbench MPs broke party lines, demanding that Starmer step down immediately. Shadow cabinet members scrambled to distance themselves from the growing crisis. But Starmer refused to yield. In a hastily arranged press conference outside 10 Downing Street, he dismissed the court's ruling as legally questionable and politically motivated, claiming it was part of a broader campaign to destabilise democracy. His defiance shocked the nation. One legal expert called it an open rebellion against the rule of law. Another warned, "We are now witnessing the collapse of constitutional order in real time." Behind closed doors, the government is unravelling. 2 senior ministers have already resigned, citing ethical concerns. The Attorney General, who reportedly urged Starmer to accept the ruling and step down with dignity, was excluded from the emergency meeting at Downing Street. Sources say the cabinet is in chaos, with several members secretly drafting letters of no confidence. Meanwhile, civil servants are reportedly operating in caretaker mode, hesitant to follow directives that could soon be declared illegitimate. Legal experts overwhelmingly agree. The court's ruling is binding, and Starmer no longer has the legal authority to remain in office. Yet, despite the legal clarity, the constitutional path forward remains uncertain. The British system, built on centuries of unwritten conventions, is now facing a crisis it was never equipped to handle. What happens when a Prime Minister refuses to follow the law? The tension is growing by the hour, and Buckingham Palace is watching closely. While no official statement has been released, insiders say the king has requested urgent briefings on constitutional protocol. According to one senior palace aide, the Crown cannot remain silent if the government breaks the law. Behind palace gates, a once unthinkable option is now being discussed. The possibility that King Charles could invoke royal prerogative to remove Starmer from office. Such a move hasn't been seen since 1834. Public trust is crumbling fast. An overnight poll shows 74% of Britons believe Starmer should resign immediately, and 61% support royal intervention if he refuses to go. Internationally, the alarm bells are ringing. The US State Department has expressed deep concern about the UK's political stability, and EU leaders are reportedly preparing statements on Britain's apparent democratic breakdown. But Starmer appears unfazed. Still holed up inside number 10, he is surrounded by a shrinking inner circle of loyalists. His refusal to step down has turned a political scandal into a full-blown constitutional crisis. The Supreme Court has laid bare the truth. But now a larger question looms. Who will enforce it? As the Prime Minister digs in and the nation's institutions strain under the weight of this unprecedented standoff, one thing is clear: Britain stands at the edge of political collapse, and time is quickly running out. The true magnitude of the scandal that has brought Keir Starmer's government to its knees goes far beyond a missing £124,000. The Supreme Court's ruling has exposed a calculated, years-long scheme of financial deception and political manipulation involving some of the most powerful names in British business and government. Forensic audits by the National Audit Office, later confirmed by the Supreme Court, showed that the £124,000 discrepancy in Starmer's property records was just the beginning. It uncovered a much deeper rot, one that revealed how the machinery of power had been twisted into a tool for personal gain. The sale of Starmer's North London property had been deliberately underreported. Despite official valuations and sale documents showing a significant profit, only a small portion of the proceeds was declared. Investigators traced the missing funds through a network of offshore accounts routed through Jersey and the British Virgin Islands. One transaction led to a dormant consulting firm registered under Starmer's brother-in-law, a company with no staff, no active business, yet over £80,000 in unexplained deposits. That discovery triggered a deeper probe into Starmer's finances, which soon exposed a disturbing pattern of abuse. Among the most damning findings was his connection to billionaire donor Lord Waqar Ali, a tech and defence mogul with vast interests in government contracts. Leaked emails and wire transfers revealed that Ali had funded luxury perks for Starmer: designer suits, first-class flights, and lavish resort stays, all while securing approvals for sensitive defence deals. One transfer stood out: a £52,000 consulting fee wired from one of Ali's shell companies to an account indirectly tied to Starmer, without an invoice, contract, or any record of services provided. The court labelled it plainly: a textbook example of influence trading. But it wasn't just about the money. The court also exposed a culture of secrecy and coercion within Starmer's administration. Several whistleblowers came forward, detailing how civil servants and junior finance staff were pressured to alter records and destroy sensitive documents. In sworn affidavits, former aides described being ordered to hide discrepancies and falsify financial reports. One whistleblower even recalled a redacted file being reconstructed, using shredded documents retrieved from a Downing Street waste bin, complete with incriminating handwritten notes from the Prime Minister himself. Perhaps the most chilling element of the court's findings was the systematic targeting of journalists and investigators who got too close to uncovering the truth. Internal communications revealed that government legal teams had been weaponised to send threatening cease and desist letters to media outlets preparing to break damaging stories. In one particularly disturbing case, a well-respected political journalist was placed under surveillance by a private firm, allegedly hired through off-the-books arrangements. Emails between Starmer's aides described certain reporters as high-risk actors and laid out detailed strategies to neutralise media threats before they became front-page news. The court condemned this as a calculated effort to suppress the truth through intimidation and fear. As the investigation widened, it uncovered that senior members of Starmer's cabinet were aware of the misconduct and either looked the other way or actively participated. One former minister, who resigned just weeks before the verdict, admitted under oath that Starmer personally instructed him to take care of the numbers in donor reporting. When the minister hesitated, he testified, he was threatened with reassignment unless he complied. These revelations have now implicated at least 8 high-ranking Labour officials, several of whom are under active investigation by the Serious Fraud Office. The fallout has shattered public trust. Outside courts and Parliament, protests are growing by the day. Tens of thousands of demonstrators have taken to the streets of London, Glasgow and Manchester in what's now being called the March for Accountability. Placards reading "Justice for Britain" and "Resign Starmer now" fill the crowds. Civil rights organisations are demanding an independent inquiry into how such blatant abuse of power went unchecked for so long. Even lifelong Labour supporters are turning their backs on the party. In a powerful act of protest, some are burning their membership cards. One retired MP called it the greatest betrayal of working-class voters in a generation. Inside Labour Party headquarters, open chaos reigns. Several MPs have resigned the whip. National campaign operations have been suspended. Leaked internal messages show party officials in frantic debate, unsure whether to cut ties with Starmer or rally behind him in a desperate bid to salvage the party's image. The divide has become so toxic that a leadership split now appears inevitable. Polling numbers are catastrophic. Labour support has crashed below 20%, with Reform UK overtaking them in several key battleground constituencies. Capitalising on the moment, Nigel Farage declared, "This isn't a scandal, it's a reckoning." The business world is also in turmoil. Financial markets, already shaken by the chaos, have taken a sharp dive. The pound has dropped 7% in just 48 hours, and investor confidence is at its lowest since the 2008 financial crisis. The Confederation of British Industry has issued a dire warning, urging the government to restore stability or face a prolonged economic downturn. Meanwhile, international observers from the EU and the Commonwealth have voiced serious concern over the breakdown of legal authority at the highest levels of British government. And as the walls close in, Starmer's inner circle is shrinking, growing more paranoid, more isolated and more desperate by the hour. Reports from Downing Street reveal heightened security measures, with staff and media now confined to restricted zones. Rumours are swirling that a legal team is preparing to file emergency appeals, or even seek international arbitration, an unprecedented move that constitutional experts warn could plunge the UK into deeper diplomatic chaos. Despite overwhelming evidence, the Prime Minister continues to deny any wrongdoing. In a second televised statement, shorter, more defensive and visibly agitated, he claimed he was the victim of a well-funded smear campaign orchestrated by enemies of reform. But even his closest allies are beginning to doubt him. Behind closed doors, many are urging him to resign for the sake of the party's crumbling legacy. Starmer, once the face of law and order, now finds himself locked in open conflict with both the judiciary and the British people. What comes next is no longer just about scandal. It's about the very survival of democratic rule in Britain. If Starmer refuses to step down voluntarily, the nation could be heading toward the unthinkable, the forced removal of a sitting Prime Minister by royal command. As pressure builds and the state's institutions falter, Britain teeters on the edge of political collapse. The Supreme Court has exposed the rot, but the true battle for the nation's soul is only beginning. With Keir Starmer still defying the Supreme Court's order to resign, the UK has plunged into a full-scale constitutional crisis. The judiciary has ruled, the evidence is clear, the public has turned. Yet Starmer remains barricaded inside Downing Street, clinging to power in what critics now call delusional defiance. What began as a financial scandal has become a dramatic showdown between the core institutions of the British state. And at the centre of it all, a long-dormant but powerful force is stirring: the Crown. Inside Buckingham Palace, a series of emergency meetings has been unfolding. King Charles III, having abruptly returned from Balmoral, is reportedly holding late-night briefings with constitutional experts, former judges, and senior members of the Privy Council. What was once a theoretical last resort is now a real and rapidly escalating option. Royal correspondents confirm that the King has been presented with 3 increasingly bold choices: deliver a private ultimatum demanding Starmer's resignation, issue a public statement declaring the government illegitimate, or, most drastically, invoke royal prerogative to dismiss the Prime Minister outright. The last time this power was exercised was in 1834, when King William IV dismissed Lord Melbourne. Never in modern democratic Britain has such a move even been considered, until now. But with the rule of law crumbling and Starmer refusing to yield, King Charles faces a grave decision: act decisively or risk being seen as complicit in a Prime Minister's rebellion against legal authority. One palace aide, speaking anonymously, described the mood as grim but resolute. They said the Crown cannot remain silent while democracy is torn apart. Meanwhile, the military has now entered the crisis, not with force, but with quiet defiance. Whitehall sources confirm that the Chief of the Defence Staff has rejected multiple requests from Downing Street to intervene in public unrest. At least 2 senior generals have reportedly informed Defence Secretary Grant Shapps that they will not obey politically motivated commands. The Ministry of Defence has placed select units on standby, but only for civil protection, not to enforce government orders. More troubling for Starmer, the Cabinet Secretary has restricted his access to national security briefings and locked down the nuclear codes, a move with no precedent in British peacetime history. Inside Whitehall, the machinery of government is grinding to a halt. Senior civil servants have initiated what's known as caretaker mode, where only essential state functions are allowed to continue. Ministers still loyal to Starmer are finding their instructions quietly ignored or outright rejected. Several permanent secretaries have reportedly held private meetings to coordinate an informal resistance, insisting the government has lost both moral and constitutional legitimacy. One senior official put it bluntly, "We serve the Crown and the people, not a rogue Prime Minister." The legal community has erupted in response. Barristers, former judges, and constitutional scholars have formed a rare united front, releasing public declarations demanding Starmer's immediate resignation. Multiple legal societies have condemned his defiance of the Supreme Court's ruling as a direct assault on judicial independence. Universities across the UK have seen faculty-led walkouts, with law students and professors marching shoulder to shoulder alongside protesters. Placards reading "The law is not optional" now fill campuses nationwide. Even the Church of England, typically silent on political affairs, has broken its silence. From the pulpit of Westminster Abbey, the Archbishop of Canterbury declared that no leader is above the judgment of truth. The message was unmistakable. The moral and spiritual pillars of the country are uniting against Starmer. Even the monarchy's most restrained advisers are now calling this what it is: a full-blown national emergency. The international fallout has been swift and unforgiving. The pound has plummeted to lows not seen since the 2008 financial crash. Trading was halted twice in a single day due to extreme volatility. The Bank of England has called emergency meetings to stabilise the markets, while multinational corporations are reportedly drafting contingency plans to pull investments if the crisis worsens. The White House issued a stern statement expressing deep concern over the UK's constitutional breakdown. In Europe, leaders, blindsided by the turmoil, have launched emergency summits to assess the stability of NATO's second-largest military power. Leaked diplomatic cables reveal that embassies across London are quietly updating evacuation protocols for their nationals. Meanwhile, several Commonwealth nations are voicing alarm at the destabilisation of their symbolic head of state. The image of a sitting Prime Minister defying a lawful order from Britain's highest court is now sending shockwaves through democracies worldwide. Inside Number 10, the atmosphere is reportedly bleak. Starmer's staff is in disarray. Several of Starmer's key advisers have already walked out. Those who remain are described as exhausted, cornered, and panicking. One former aide told reporters that Downing Street meetings have devolved into shouting matches, finger-pointing, and raw desperation. Leaked internal memos reveal that government lawyers are now grasping at obscure fringe legal theories to challenge the Supreme Court's authority, an approach constitutional scholars have dismissed as absurd and doomed to fail. But it's not just the legal collapse that's unfolding, it's the streets.